Call this meeting to order at 7:31, special legislative meeting. Members of the council, you have before you an agenda. If anyone has any conflicts of interest for items that appear on this agenda, please let us know now. And also let me know if any amendments are required to the agenda as presented. Councilmember Lingo, if you're speaking, which you often do in circumstances like this, I can't hear you. So I hope
No, I have none.
Okay, hearing none, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda of the special legislative meeting as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Lingua to approve the agenda. Are there any comments, discussion of the motion to approve the agenda as submitted? Are there any public comments on this motion? Just in case someone wants to unmute, I'll say that Councilmember Foe, is ill this evening and will not be joining us. Councilmember Sadiq is traveling overseas and will not be able to join us as well.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson.
Yes.
Hi, this is Donna Holland. I live in Madison Hill. I just wanted to possibly add an agenda item relative to Parkdale student trespassing.
Okay. Why don't we add that under new business, and we can discuss it at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Now let me put a note for myself because I will probably forget if I don't. Okay, bring that up under new business. I can find my cursor again. There it is. So that's not a formal change to the agenda. It's just an item that we will discuss at that time. If there are no other public comments, I will do a roll call vote of those present. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe is absent. Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq is absent. Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Thank you. And Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 4-0. The first item on the agenda is public comments. Are there any public comments? Hearing none, let's move on to the legislative action items. Item number 1, a motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-04 regarding election judges. Can we please scroll down a little bit? See the names. Okay, unless there is any advanced discussion required, may I please have a motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-04 regarding election judges.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Smith to approve lost my cursor again. to adopt resolution 2023-R-04 regarding election judges. So as you can see from the resolution, there are 3 election judges nominated for the main judge positions. And there are 2 people who are nominated to be alternate election judges should one of the main election judges be unable to serve on the day of the election. We are supposed to make these appointments during the month of February, and so here we are towards very close to the end of February. So is there additional council discussion of this resolution? And by the way, the ordinance regarding elections says that we may appoint as many alternates as we see fit. And so we have had 2 volunteers, and that is how many I am recommending that we appoint. Are there any public comments? If there's no council comments. Okay, I will do a roll call vote again. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
He's absent, isn't he?
Oh, thank you. Councilmember Lingua,
In appreciation for all, aye.
thank you. Councilmember Siddiq is absent. Councilmember Mejia
Aye.
and Councilmember Mayor.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 4-0. Thank you. Let's move on to agenda item 2. Motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-06 regarding legacy mixed-use town center local design review committee nominations. So we are required to re-nominate members for this review committee, which reviews, compares applications to the local design standards. And there are slightly conflicting requirements from the new legacy MUTC version of the zoning ordinance and the old one under which the design plan was adopted. However, we meet both of them, and so this is the list of recommended representatives, which is coincidentally the same as the current membership. So with that introduction, do any council members need additional background before we can have a motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-06? If not, can someone please make a motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-06?
So moved.
Second,
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Lingua. Is there council discussion of this motion? Are there public comments or questions on this motion? Hearing none, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 4-0. Next item on the agenda is motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-07 regarding reappointment of alternate member of the Ethics Commission. Can we have a staff report on this, please?
Certainly. Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. This item is a resolution to reappoint the alternate member of the Ethics Commission. When we appointed the Ethics Commission just a few months ago, our alternate member, one of our full members, became an alternate member and needed to fill the rest of the alternates, their predecessor's term. So it gave them just a few months, and we just needed to renew their appointment. This is retroactive to November, and then they will be up for appointment in 2024.
Thank you, Director Barnes.
Certainly.
Do council members need additional background? Can you scroll down to the list with the name? Corey Beaufort. Okay, so may I please have a motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-07 regarding reappointment of alternate member of the Riverville Park Ethics Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Council Member Lingua, seconded by Council Member Smith. Is there council discussion of this motion? Are there public comments on this motion? Hearing none, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 4-0. Let's move on to legislative action item 4. I almost skipped over it. Motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-08 regarding Board of Election Appeals. The Board of Election Appeals is supposed to be appointed at the same time as the members of the Board of Election. I have not heard back from my nominee from last time. However, there are 4 members who we can appoint, and so they're listed on the screen. And may I please have a motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-08 regarding the Board of Election Appeals.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Mayers. Is there council discussion of this agenda item?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
are the wards listed here where they are nominated from or where the individuals reside?
Looks like where they are nominated from.
Okay. Yeah, because I know the Ward 5 resident here is a proud constituent of Ward 1, but assuming that everything's in order, no problems there.
I know that the nominee for Ward 1 is also a proud member. Actually, Ward 1 is from lives in, no, that's Ward 1, yes. No, she's in Ward 2. Anyway.
Your Ward 6 nominee is a resident of Ward 3.
Yes. So we have the 4 nominees that are nominated by various members. So is there additional council discussion?
The potential nominee for Ward 3 is referring to their place of employment about participation, and will be back with staff in a week or so.
Okay. Thank you. Any additional council discussion? Any public comments? Hearing none, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
thank you, Councilmember Mayers,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 4-0. Okay, we are to a potentially slightly controversial one. Agenda item 5, motion to adopt resolution 2023-R-09 regarding suspension of competitive bid requirements for the 54th Avenue lighting project. Director Barnes, can you please provide a staff report, or can staff please provide a report?
Director Lewis.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, council members, members of the community, staff, and our special guests. Recent efforts to secure a contractor to complete streetlight projects has not been successful. In April of 2022, the solicitation to install 9 new town streetlights and related equipment on the trolley trail north and south of town center received only 1 bid. That bid was more than 3 times the estimate of the town's on-call engineer and well exceeded the project budget, which is bond funded with a town match. Most recently, staff released an invitation to bid that combined the trolley trail lighting project with the 54th Avenue lighting project, and no bids were received. The 54th Avenue lighting project has a June 30th due date, a condition of funding from the county's Community Development Block Grant Program. In order to meet this due date, staff proposes to serve as the general contractor on the project and solicit bids from area electricians and civil contractors. To proceed with this approach, staff is requesting the council to adopt Resolution 2023-R0-09 to suspend the competitive bidding process for the selection of contractors, to complete the project, and to authorize the town manager to sign a contract with the selected electrician and civil contractor. And with that, I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Do council members have questions for Director Lewis?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Director Lewis, do you feel that by this approach, this should be able to be completed in time?
If in fact we can find contractors to submit proposals and have those proposals in within the next couple of weeks, I believe so. If we get those contractors within the next couple of weeks, I think we can have a contract in place 2 weeks after that, and the project could start, I would say, by the end of March. And we could certainly meet that due date. We actually have the street light inventory on hand in Public Works. Those are the poles, globes, LED kits. And it's if there's no supply chain issues otherwise with other materials needed for the project, we should definitely be able to finish it by the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. So it's essentially you're just in need of bodies to be able to do the work.
That's right, sir.
Qualified bodies.
Qualified bodies to do the
Pardon
work.
me.
Yes,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
Any additional council questions in advance of a motion? Hearing none, may I please have a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-R-09 regarding suspension of competitive bid requirements for the 54th Avenue lighting project.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Linguist, seconded by Councilmember Smith. Is there council discussion of this resolution? Yes?
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it just seems it seems we're in a corner, and this is our best option out. I think it's prudent that we take it. Otherwise, I mean, not trying at all. It is just not. It's not a service to anybody.
Yes, and I believe that I've certainly been hearing a lot about difficulty in finding contractors and getting things done. So I think we need to do everything we can to move the project forward. This is an important project to get done. Okay, any additional council discussion? Any public comments? Mr. Inyang.
Good evening. I guess my question is around sort of that last thing you just mentioned around the town's ability to secure bids. My question is this unique to the project specifically, or is this a larger trend on the ability to get competitive bids for projects for the town?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
Actually, we've only experienced this on the streetlight projects, our road improvement projects, our municipal center project. and others that we've done over the last year or during the pandemic have been successful. There's something unique about this streetlight project that's undesirable, and maybe the project is too small for the contractors that bid on this type of project, but we've not found it to be widespread among the projects that we've pursued.
Thank you.
I've certainly had difficulty in my private life finding contractors to do things. So
Really?
that
Okay.
was what I was, and I've heard from other residents that they too are having issues, and that was the reason for my comment. Any additional public comments? Hearing none, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers,
Aye.
and I abstain. The motion passes 4-0, receiving the required 4 affirmative votes in order to suspend competitive bid requirements.
Thank
That
you.
brings us to new business. We have a single item previously agreed upon to be discussed here, the Parkdale trespassing. The residents, can you just go ahead and speak and tell us what's going on with that? And the last I had heard, the Prince George's County Public Schools was planning to extend their security fence. Did that happen?
Hi.
Oh,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. You go ahead and speak first.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Thompson. This is Donna Holland again.
Mhm.
I don't know if the additional security has been provided at Parkdale. I will mention that there continues to be a glaring issue that is turning into a nuisance with the student trespassing issue. It is of great concern relative to property, liability, and personal safety. My husband and I have both encountered students on numerous occasions, and hopefully you have seen my letters. I've written several letters to the CEO of Prince George's County Schools, copied Riverdale Park Police Chief, Angela Alsobrooks, et cetera, et cetera. And the overarching issue is there is nothing to keep students from trespassing on the properties here. Understanding that Dr. Graves, the principal at Parkdale, has limited authority relative to keeping students off of private property. The concern has been that there is nothing to deter students from crossing from behind the school, the wooded area, which I understand is owned by Maryland National Capital Park and Planning, and the residences that are along the property line there. So it's flagrant. I've been cursed out numerous times by students. There is definitely a safety concern. And I guess I'm just wondering what Riverdale Park Town can do relative to this issue and the possibility of putting up some type of safeguard to keep the trespassing minimized.
Okay, we do not usually install security systems on private property. Can we hear from the police department on what possible issues there are, possible solutions are for enforcing the no trespassing rules?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have Lieutenant Slattery here this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and Mr. Lestitian. Yeah, we are definitely aware of the situation up there, and Chief Wixons has been working with the school board security. We have our community policing unit up there every day, at dismissal for lots of reasons other than the trespassing. He's working closely with the school resource officer, and the past 2 weeks we've been up there, like the resident said, daily for complaints, and we either chase the students off and they go disappear into the woods, or they don't run and we take them back to the school resource officer. Unfortunately, the school doesn't, it's not that they don't want to do anything. I'm just not sure what their plan is to do with them. But we have certainly been responding up there, and we've actually even walked in the woods and spoken with Maryland Park. There was a Maryland Park Police who at one point even had mounted unit officers back there, but they're a little reluctant to get involved up there right now. But we are definitely aware of the situation and working the best we can with the school board security folks.
And Mr. Mayor, I'll follow up with Deputy Chief Turner tomorrow and see if there's any additional information.
Okay. Do you feel that the current intervention is likely to reduce this? Is this going to require a long-term police presence at dismissal in order to deter this behavior?
Lieutenant?
Sir, it definitely goes in cycles. You know, a lot of it depends on the weather, and of course, you know, that's been a little erratic. But definitely on the nicer days, there's more students skipping school and going through the woods. Dismissal's always been a problem, and we've been working with the school on that just to get word to the parents to not actually park on up in Madison Hill on Silk Tree Drive. They're parking there, and the students are walking over either through the woods or just around, and they're blocking people's driveways. That definitely has making an impact on that, and that is definitely going down. The skipping school and, you know, running through the woods and kids back there, you know, smoking marijuana, that is very cyclical depending on the weather, but we're out there every day working on it.
Okay, Councilmember Smith, I see your hand is up.
Yes, for Lieutenant Slattery, you mentioned that we've had a police presence at dismissal consistently for this and a number of other reasons. I was wondering if you could expand on that.
Well, like I said, most of the complaints are from citizens whose driveways are being blocked either when they're trying to leave or, more importantly, trying to come home and get in their driveways. And there's so many cars, it's almost a log jam. So we've been up there actively, you know, trying to not write parking tickets, doing the best we can to persuade the people to move. It's, believe it or not, sometimes they're very reluctant. They just will look you right in the face and say, well, you know, we're here to pick up our kids. And there's even a letter from the school encouraging them. They don't want to do it because it's a much longer wait to get down into school property, but that is definitely improving.
Okay, so it's primarily these trespassing issues, blocking driveways, parking issues, things like that.
Well, I believe what the citizens talking about now is kids skipping school down there on the tot lot, smoking weed and hanging out and doing things they shouldn't be doing in the woods. The parking issue is related, but a little bit separate.
Okay, so the issue with the things going on in the woods, that's part of why we have a police presence there after school?
Well, it's both, sir.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Excuse me, may I make a comment, please?
Please do.
Hi, my name is Michelle Fobbs, and I am a resident of Madison Hill. And as my neighbor Donna spoke, I just want to say that just dittoing everything that she spoke of. However, there are students that are hanging at the top lot, not after school. This is like 9:30. There's a gathering. They come in 2 vans, and about 10 or more students get out of one van and they hang at the tot lot. This is like 9:30. I've seen them at 10:30. I've called the police several times. So it's not only in the morning when they first go to school or either when school is out, but they have been congregating during the school day, as well as the woods. I do understand that that's hard. I called the principal as well. But my concern is that last year, as the weather gets warmer, there are more students hanging out. They have hung out practically just about all day. I've seen them last year, just about the whole school day. My concern is that once before last year, there was a small brush fire, I guess from smoking, and they threw it out, and the fire department had to come. Just concerned about what may happen with them congregating in the woods as well as the tot lot. This week has been a little better, it's just Monday, but I'm just concerned about what could happen with the students hanging out constantly in the woods and at the tot lot.
Understood. Ms. Holland and Ms. Fobbs, have you seen any improvement over the last 2 weeks during the time the police have been out there every day?
For me, the kids are still walking in the backyard. We have a camera in our backyard, and the camera even announces that we are recording you. They'll stop, look around, and they see the camera, but they'll still walk just as casually through our backyards. The tot lot, I've seen a little difference within the last couple of days, but they're still walking in our yard. We see the presence of the students walking in the yard.
Okay. Ms. Holland? See, your hand is up. You appear to be muted, maybe. There you go.
I'm sorry. I
That's fine.
apologize, Mayor Thompson.
Happens to the best of
This
us.
is Donna Holland.
Mhm.
I echo the sentiments that Ms. Dobbs just expressed to you. We have routine trespassing. They either come from the woods and cross our yard onto Silk Tree, or they come from Silk Tree and cross through our yard to the woods. And there are also many instances of student trespassing from the direction of the tot lot, crossing several yards into the woods up onto Silk Tree Drive. So I have not noticed a tremendous decrease in the issue. It's daily, it's ongoing.
Okay, and do you, at least previously, I had gotten the impression that a lot of this traffic was due to the discouraged drop off and pick up with the students, but it sounds like there's this second issue of high school students hanging out at the tot lot, which is of course not ideal. It's not designed for them.
Truancy, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, I'm aware. I mean, the 9:30, 10:30 a.m. drop off. I have been sort of vaguely hearing about issues of the school system basically not enforcing truancy issues recently, and I have not followed up on that, but I will add that to my list. Mr. Town Manager, do you know if there's a reason that skipping back to the pickup drop off, is there a reason that the police department is not writing tickets for this? I mean, that's part of the reason that we changed the signs and have the new parking policy, is to prevent this sort of clogging of the streets.
Well, I would say a couple of things. One, I think that the police are trying to find proper balance. I think that's what the lieutenant alluded to. in terms of encouraging folks to be respectful of others when they're there, recognizing that parents too are on a short time schedule and trying to find that sort of balance as the police often, or not often, always do, is try to find that balance. In my report this evening, I do have an update as it relates to parking enforcement more broadly. And if it's all right, I'd like to reserve those comments for that.
Yeah, that's fine by me. Ms. Holland, your hand is still up. Do you have something else you wish to say?
Yes. Yes. Can you hear me, Mayor Thompson?
I can.
Okay, great. Thank you. I think there are a couple of issues here. One that deals with the congregation of parents picking up children at the top of the hill at dismissal time. And myself and Ms. Dobbs, we live further down Silk Tree Drive, closer to the tot lot.
Okay.
So we aren't seeing as much of the issue relative to the bottleneck at the top of the hill that intersects with Good Luck Road. We're seeing just the influx of students trespassing across our properties as they go to and from wherever they're going when they enter the Madison Hill community. And that really is more of a concern as it relates to my particular property and residential area. And I'm guessing that is probably akin to the issue that Ms. Dobbs is also experiencing.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Councilmember Smith, your
Thank
hand
you.
is back up.
Yeah, I'm just wondering this, the tot lot that's being referenced, I'm not terribly familiar with this neighborhood. Is that a park and planning park? Is that a town park, or is that like an HOA administered park?
It's park and planning.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please go ahead, Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you. My question is to staff, just in regards on the discussion of finding a balance. To date, how many citations for improper parking have been issued?
We can get that for you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
What options are available to the police for trespassing? I mean, I understand that we may want to try to work this out with some balance, but if this continues, then what options are open to the police?
Lieutenant, can you explain the trespassing statute?
Yeah, the trespass, I mean, I believe with trespassing, especially at that tot lot, being a public property on the citizens' backyards, we could. The juvenile court system obviously is. I'm not saying they're not going to take that serious, but it's it wouldn't be at the top of their list. It's more. I don't think that's a preventive thing, because when we're up there, we run them off, but then they come back when we're not there. It's more trying to work with the school system to curb this behavior. And I hate to say that they would just go somewhere else, but usually they might go northbound on Good Luck Road and somewhere else. But we're trying to get them to stop this pattern of behavior, and charging them would, we certainly could, but it's very difficult to get even a serious charge on a juvenile, much less a one for trespassing. That's just how it is.
Councilmember Lingua?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm going to ask an obvious question here, because I haven't really heard what the result is, the outcome has been. So I'm just wondering how much it's been pursued. When the opportunity presents itself, are parents being notified about the fact that their child is trespassing? Or
Yeah, Mr. Councilman, when we
Yeah.
we have returned the students back to the school resource officer, and according to the school resource officer, they are. We do not do that because
Right.
it's the school thing, and they're very they don't like us taking any police action on school property, so we leave that up to the school resource officer who works for Prince George's County Police.
Okay. So you're working in conjunction with you're coordinating with the Prince George's County Police Department on that.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Holland, your hand is back up again, I see.
It is. I have a question about the tot lot. In our HOA meeting recently, the issue was raised about removal of the tot lot since it seems to be a place where the students regularly congregate, and it's problematic, clearly. Would we have to go through Maryland National Capital Park and Planning to have that tot lot decommissioned, or is there a way for it to be removed so that it's not such an attractive place for students to congregate?
You would have to work with Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. We have some small influence. We can certainly advocate on your behalf with them, but it's their park. And I know that they are, in general, quite averse to closing down parks. But certainly the HOA can approach them. We can conceivably address this in a letter of support of some sort. It's unfortunate that your representative is out of the country this evening, and I believe he's not returning before the end of March. So we're in not the best position for dealing with this situation with him out of the picture right now.
I understand.
Well, let's see. Let's go with, we have a representative from MNC PPC, but let's go with Town Manager Lustitian first.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I have a recommendation for how to move forward. Perhaps we invite someone from the school, the principal or the resource officers or both, to a future meeting. That this has been an ongoing item. I know our chief has worked with the school system trying to have the fence constructed, and perhaps inviting the principal and the school resource team or a member of their team to a mayor and council meeting would facilitate a more complete conversation.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation, sir.
Okay, I'm going to recognize Ms. Hedgepeth from MNC PPC.
So good evening. Just in response to the young lady who was inquiring about decommissioning the tot lot, as the mayor indicated, that's highly unlikely. However, I would be willing, to work with you to try to come up with some type of resolution to that issue. So what I'm going to do is going to ask you if you could email me tomorrow, and we can have some additional conversation. I'm the park planning supervisor for the Department of Parks and Recreation. My email is my first dot last name. It's Tanya.Hedgepeth@pgparks.com. You can see my name on the screen. Just like I said, my first dot last name at pgparks.com, and we'll see what we can do to try to alleviate that situation.
Thank you, Ms. Hedgepeth. Appreciate your speaking up. Ms. Holland, your hand is up again, or still up?
I apologize. I'm sorry. Thank you. I did not have an opportunity to grab a pen to write down the representative from Parks and Planning. Needed to write down the email address so that I may reach out to you.
Okay.
Sure.
Director
Are you
Barnes?
are you able to see my screen?
She's called in.
I'm sorry.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're calling in. I'm sorry. It's Tanya, Tanya
Uh-huh.
.Hedgepeth, spelled HEDGEPETH. I know that's a lot. So it's Howard Edward Daniel, George Edward, Paul Edward, Thomas Henry. So Tanya.Hedgepeth at pgparks.com.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, Ms. Holland and Ms. Fobbs, I'm going to have a serious discussion with the town manager tomorrow evening. Ms. Holland, if you could please CC me on the message you send to Ms. Hedgepeth, I would be appreciative to be part of that conversation, at least monitoring it.
Thank you so very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Will do.
Okay, unless there's additional questions or discussion of this, I'd like to move on to unfinished business. Okay,
Mr. Mayor,
yes,
I had a item of new business.
yes,
I believe everybody got over email this evening, the correspondence that Councilmember Foe forwarded regarding the Riversdale House Museum seeking an endorsement for their application for grant money for their exhibit on the enslaved persons from the Riversdale Mansion. I just want to see to it that we're working towards that and helping out the museum as much as we can.
okay, but I haven't read I saw that email had come in, but I was quite frenzied before the meeting, so let me read it for a moment. So would you like to make a motion to send a letter of support based on the letter provided via email by Councilmember Foe?
Yes, I would make a motion to send a letter of support for the Riversdale House Museum as outlined by the email from Councilmember Foe.
Very good. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
The motion was by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Mayers. Councilmember Smith, I would presume that this would be signed by myself and that you would be okay with the town staff perhaps lightly editing the letter.
As long as your wonderful words are preserved in their spirit, Mr. Mayor.
Very good. Then I will be happy to work with staff to get this out. Is there a deadline? I didn't read Councilmember Spo's letter in detail.
I believe it's the end of the month, Mr. Mayor, or the end of the week. I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Say the end of the month is very soon.
I can't get over the February, March thing. March is just too soon.
Yeah.
Got 3 hours to get it together, Mr. Mayor.
No, not quite, not quite. Okay, so I will take this on as an urgent task to get it out by the end of the week. So if adopted by the council. So any additional council discussion? Any public comments? Okay, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
All right.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers,
Aye.
and I abstain. Motion passes 4-0. Are there any additional items of new business? Are there any items of unfinished business?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes,
just as a follow-up, what we brought up tonight under new business, with the issues over at Parkdale, can we add that to next week's agenda under unfinished business?
certainly. we could discuss it at the work session even, but we can definitely add it to next week's agenda.
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, I think we've discussed it here. And I think you have a plan going forward. So, but I think it's something that would probably be good to discuss next week under unfinished business as well.
Mhm.
Each time, board's time for any updates or any anyone who wants to come in on behalf of Park and Planning or Parkdale or county police resources to discuss this.
Mhm. And I'm hoping that we can actually request attendance representation from the school system by next week. I would like to be able to do that if we can pull it off. Because this has been, I had thought that it had gotten better, but it sounds like not. And so I would like, you know, as I said, I saw some emails from the CEO of the school systems saying that that the fence was going to be installed. I had assumed that that was going to improve the situation. It sounds like that hasn't happened. So I would like to expedite review of this next week, or as soon as possible.
And
Thank
Mr.
you.
Mayor,
Yes.
we will reach out to the schools tomorrow and see if they're able to send someone next week.
Okay, thank you. Any additional items of new or unfinished business? Okay, before I ask for a call for adjournment, I'll just point out to everyone who's in this meeting that we still have a work session coming up. This is just adjourning the special legislative meeting, which I thought was going to be pretty quick, but it's always good to discuss items when residents bring them to us. So, hey, please have a motion to adjourn the special legislative meeting.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Mayers. This is neither discussed nor debated. I will move immediately to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith,
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers,
Aye.
and I abstain. Motion passes. We are adjourned at 8:23 p.m. And now, without a moment's to be wasted, I will call the work session to order also at 8:23. And work session is a much more informal meeting, and we are not quite so bound by the strict interpretation of the rules of order, but we do still pay attention to them. So I hope that members of the council have been able to see the agenda. Are any amendments required, and are there any conflicts of interest for agenda items? We don't need a vote, so hearing nothing, I will move on into presentations. First presentation is an update on Waggertail Dog Park from the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. And we've already met our presenter.
So good evening, everyone. My name is Tanya Hedgepeth. I am the Park Planning Supervisor with the Maryland National Capital Park and Planning Commission. I am actually joined by one of my colleagues, Shuba Panase. Shuba, do you want to say hello to everyone?
Good evening, everyone. I'm Shubha Panase. I'm the new Northern Area Park Planner for the Department of Parks and Rec.
Thank you.
Welcome to both of you.
Thanks. So I believe we provided you just a few slides to kind of get the conversation started. Do you guys have that, or should I share screen and bring it up?
Please share your screen.
Okay, give me just a minute to get that started. And of course, I'm going to have technical difficulties. I'm almost there. One moment.
Murphy's Law.
It never works when you want it to, right? But I think you can see it now, correct?
There we go.
All right, there we go. So one of the first things I want to do though is before we talk about Waggertail Dog Park, I did want to make you all aware of some completed completed and pending park planning projects. So one of the first things that we've done quite recently in the last couple of months is they did place some pickleball overlays on the tennis courts, if you weren't aware. I know a lot of people are excited about pickleball. Some people are, some people aren't, but it's the latest hot, I guess, sports activity that's like, like popping up everywhere. But in addition, there are some things that we do have planned for the Riverdale Community Park as well. We're going to do some diamond fill upgrades. There is also a plan to convert the recreational building into a comfort station. And then last but not least is the playground is going to be replaced this coming May. We are partnering with Kaboom to make that happen. So that's an exciting event, and we're all looking quite forward to that. But I did want to talk to you guys explicitly about what's happening at Waggertail. So I know this has been going on for a while, and I do apologize. With Laura Connolly leaving last summer, it's kind of fallen off of our radar. For those of you who know Laura, she had a lot of projects, and this was just one of many that we've been trying to coordinate. But, with that said, it is back on our radar. We are aware of some of the issues and some of the challenges that the dog park, has currently. So the first slide, as you see, it's an image of the park itself. And then we've actually zoomed in on the location of the Waggertail Dog Park, right near Tuckerman and 51st Avenue. Let's see the next slide. This is a more zoomed in version where you can see the dog park split in two. You see the smaller dog area and then the larger dog area right adjacent to the diamond fields. The final slide is the slide of concern. And as you can see, there are quite a few things going on here. So the challenges are as follows. The whole park is within the floodplain. The current topography of the park is what causes the flooding, and that some of the portions of the park don't drain very well. We are aware that we do need to go out and do some further assessments of this park to make some potential short and long-term improvements, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. So what's happening is that the swells and the culverts collect debris, also collect debris after the storm events. Some of the existing trees are becoming impacted by the flood waters, again, requiring further assessment and some potential mitigation. Some major renovations regarding the floodplain are going to be some time, is going to be a time-consuming process, as it's going to require some permits and some approvals with full-blown engineering plans. So we're going to have to really get in here and look at some engineering improvements to make some to handle these issues with the flooding. So there are some short-term improvements, some repairs, some quick fixes that we can do, as well as some long-term strategies, which will entail possibly relocating or redesigning the dog park. So in the short term, we could be very proactive in making sure that, following major storm events that we get out there and, get the water out. We could also temporarily change the dog park fencing and the layout of the dog park to, push people towards, certain portions of the park that that aren't as frequently flooded in that floodplain area. But in the long term, we are going to probably have to redesign and recreate the park to make sure that we address the flooding and the subsequent issues, and probably permanently relocate the dog park to another location inside the park, possibly at or near the tennis courts, or potentially at another park. I know this may be disheartening, but unfortunately, when you're dealing with, a park basically being in a floodplain, it's going to constantly, be wet. And so essentially that's where we are with Waggertail. And so I'm here to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Ms. Hedgepeth. Council members, any questions?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please, Councilmember Lingle, go ahead.
Thank you. Ms. Hedgepeth, what time frame are you estimating that this would involve from, well, let's say the short-term time frame and the long-term time frame?
That is a good question. I am not sure. I mean, yeah, as we all know, short term, can be anywhere from a few months to a few years, and long term could be, 5 years or longer. I'm hoping that it's not that. Like I said, this did fall off of our radar, so I will need to talk to our maintenance team to make some determinations about, to determine how long, these improvements would take and what they may, subsequently entail. So I'll get back to you on, timeframes if you don't mind.
That would be great. Thank you. And just a small note, congratulations on the new position,
Thank you.
relatively new position, and just to keep in mind that you inherit what you come into and you fashion what you leave. So that's
I gotcha. Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, I'm just wondering if any of the flooding issues with Waggertail Dog Park are if they will be mitigated with the completion of the stormwater project at Gosling Pond, or if that ongoing construction is maybe exacerbating the flooding at Waggertail Dog Park. And then also just personal reasons, if you know when that pond will be filled back up and have fish in it again, I'd love to hear about it.
I don't know if Gosling Pond is, exacerbating the flooding at Waggertail. It's quite possible. As far as the scheduling for the improvements, I'm not as familiar. For those of you who don't know me, I've only been in this position for about a year. So I'm still learning all of the projects and all of the timelines and the like. Just give me some time to kind of get up to speed, but I am quite responsive and I'll let you know.
I appreciate that. And
Sure.
just put a point on, there's a council member from Riverdale Park whose mental health will be greatly improved by the fish getting back in that pond. So
Okay,
appreciate it.
sure.
Thank you.
So Councilmember Smith, I'm pretty sure that the flooding issues there are not impacted by the work at Gosling Pond. It's sort of the dog park is almost at the sort of the headwaters of a different stormwater system that flows south.
Yeah, I just thought because the Gosling Pond Park comes right up there against Waggertail.
Right, but I believe that there's a sort of mound between Waggertail Park and that waterway that drains almost directly into the Anacostia, heading east.
Gotcha.
That's just from looking at the waterways on GIS systems too many times while doing redistricting. So
Thanks, I appreciate it.
sure. It's unfortunate that Councilmember Foe, who represents Ward 2, and which ward this park is not here. And we have a resident who's very concerned about it, Ms. Laura Katz, who's also often at council meetings, but apparently not this evening. So that's unfortunate. I'm very heartened to hear that there are the short-term plans to try to keep the park usable and pleasant while you make longer term plans. I think that's very important. I know there are a lot of our residents who really enjoy the park, and I'm hopeful that we can keep them happy and allow them and their dogs to continue to use the park while we figure out what to do in the long term.
Yeah, I can completely, relate to, those feelings. I'm a dog parent myself. I keep looking over here to my little dog over here to the left of me, just hoping that he doesn't start barking towards us during this meeting. So I do understand, the issues with, having a place for them to play. So I get it.
Okay. Are there any public comments or questions or comments for Ms. Hedgecock? Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation on the update. I really appreciate it. And we'll be looking to hear more in the months and years ahead as we make progress.
We'll be back in touch really soon. Thank you so much. Have a great night.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The next item on our agenda is Maryland Department of Agriculture Mosquito Control Program. And it says it was Brian Prendergast, but it looks like Stormy Keys is here. It's the name on the account anyway. So Maryland Department of Agriculture, please tell us about the mosquito control program.
Hi, I'm Stormy Keys, and I had planned on Brian being here, so I'm going to fill in the best I can. I'm the administrative aide for the College Park office that manages the mosquito control program in PG County. This includes the spray program as well as the larviciding. And I believe the focus of this event is for the spray program or both?
It's the spray program. We had a long
Primarily.
discussion last spring about whether to participate in the spray program. We are very interested in continuing the larvicide program, but the spray program was controversial, and we determined last year to consider alternatives, consider some pollinator support activities, and revisit the issue. So we're back. It's spring again, and so we're back to discussing the participation in the spray program.
Well, things aren't going to change much compared to last year. It just keeps it easier for everybody. You'll have the same spray night. We'll be spraying the same pesticide. I've talked with Jessica about this, and I know your concerns about your pollinator gardens. We have assured her that we do not spray near those pollinator gardens, so that should alleviate some concerns that you may have.
Okay, well, that definitely will improve for some people. There was some confusion. I think we cleared it up last year that individual homes could opt out, and we've been told maybe 3 or 4 years ago that was no longer an option, but I believe it still is. Is that true?
Yeah, you're speaking of the exemption. So a resident can fill out an exemption form, and that affords them a 300-foot buffer around their house from spraying. So if one of your residents submits an exemption form, we plot that on our spray map, and we determine that buffer. And that's, if you know, the length of a football field is quite a long range. And so it can wipe out, a good portion of a block. It might not be make a lot of people happy, but it'll make the person who's filling out the form happy. The only time that we override those exemptions is if we have to spray for West Nile virus. So that's the same policy. If we determine that we've received so many exemptions that strategically placed can essentially eliminate an entire community, or reduce it to the point where it wouldn't be effective for us to spray, then, and there's still people who would like to be sprayed, then that we can, discuss further steps, to kind of reduce those buffers to maybe 50 feet, but it's a process. So Yeah, but those are still available. And we also have our complaint portal online that people can submit complaints. We'll come out and inspect their yard to see what's causing the mosquitoes to be a nuisance and educate them on tips and best practices to reduce those breeding hazards in their yards.
Okay, I appreciate that. After last year's presentation, I actually went and invested in a big jar of the Bacillus thuringiensis BT pellets, which I after every or before, ideally, every rainstorm, then I would fling them up on my roof, since I think I have a fair number of mosquitoes in my gutters. And so it did seem to help. There seemed to be a lower population in my yard last year. So
Okay.
I'll encourage others to do the same sort of thing. Council members, any questions for Ms. Keys?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please, Councilmember Langlois.
Thank you very much. Ms. Keys, has the department looked into alternative larvicides and adulticides that they could use?
Alternative to we use quite a few different larviciding products. Brian would be more well-versed in speaking about those. All I can say is that we're still using the same things that we've always used.
Okay.
You know, the BTI products, the Alticid, those types of things.
Okay.
And then the spraying is the permethrin.
So the mesoprin's still being used.
What was that?
The one spray that you had in use?
Permethrin?
Yes.
Yeah.
The permethrin is the
Permethrin, yes.
brand program, the adulticide, right?
Correct.
That's the phrase I was looking for. It was not just coming, only a portion of it was coming to the top of the head, so. So,
yes.
Okay, that's the one question I had. Thank you.
Any additional council questions or comments? Any public comments? Okay, thank you, Ms. Keys. I appreciate arriving. Please give our regards to Mr. Prendergast. And thank you for sitting through our long special legislative, and hope to see you again at some point in the future.
Thank you.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is from the Deputy Director of Finance Services, Mr. Jones, on fiscal year 2023 estimated actuals and fiscal year 2024 projections for revenue.
And Mr. Mayor, yes, so again, tonight's presentation will be covering the estimated actuals for the current year, fiscal year 2023, as well as projections for fiscal year 2024. Additionally, I will be covering the actual figures that we have year to date in the current fiscal year. So consistent with some of the previous revenue reports that I presented, we have various major categories that we divide our revenue into. The first is local taxes. So for the current fiscal year, year to date, we have a total of $6,385,000, which makes up about 88% of our budgeted figure. As far as an estimated actual for the end of the current fiscal year, we have a projection of $7,228,000. And for fiscal year 2024, we have a projected amount of $7,421,000. Now, two items within this major category that I'd like to go into with a bit more detail is 4001, which is real estate taxes. We have an estimated actual of 5,834,000. So we are expected to exceed our budgeted figure. And for our fiscal year 2024, we have a projected amount of 5,945,000. We recently received the constant yield notice. So we've used that updated assessable base to come up with the figure that we do have here. But as in years past, we do have some questions for the state based off of that constant yield notice. But in maintaining a conservative approach, we landed at the 5,945,000 figure that you see here. But based off of some of the preliminary numbers, we do think that once we get back in touch with the state, we may be able to increase that projection to around 6.1 million. The next item in local taxes that we'd like to take another look at is personal property tax. In previous meetings, I've mentioned how due to some state legislation, personal property tax tangibles, we may not receive the full 770,000 that was budgeted. Currently, we received just 359,258. And for the fiscal year 2024 projections that we have a total of 432,650. Due to the state legislation with tangibles, the threshold being at a higher level, that's decreased about 30% of our assessment. And we expect that to remain consistent in the next fiscal year. So overall, we do expect to hit our budgeted amount at 7,228,000 for local taxes. For fiscal year 2024, our projections are to exceed that, and we have a total of 7,421,000. The next major category is licenses and permits. The actual year to date, we have a total of 204,655 with a budgeted amount of 204,250. So at this point, roughly 4 months ago, we've already hit 100% for our budgeted amount. So we've increased our estimated actuals for this figure to 214,000. For year 2024, we're remaining consistent with being conservative, and we have a projected amount for the next fiscal year of $195,930. Multifamily rental licenses came in a bit higher at 133,000. We had a budgeted amount of 115,000, but in order to remain consistent with our conservative approach, we have left that projection there at 115,000, giving us the total of 195. Let's see. So the next category that we have is administrative fees. Year to date, we have a total of 32,610. That's a $3,200 budget. So we've far exceeded that number. In previous meetings, I've mentioned how there have been a large amount of municipal infractions. Our neighborhood services team is doing a great job in enforcing those infractions. So that's why that number is much higher than what was budgeted. For an estimated actual administrative fees at the end of the current fiscal year, we have a total of 35,330. And we have a projection for the next fiscal year of 2,950. The next major category, fines and forfeitures. This includes vehicle impounds, parking citations, and police reports. We have a total of 30,890. So we're at 77% of our budgeted amount. Our estimated actual is 43,140. So we do expect to exceed our budgeted amount for this category, and we'll keep it consistent with fiscal year 2024. We have $43,500 as a fiscal year 2024 projection. Next category we have is community safety programs, which includes your speed cameras, automated red light enforcement, and then third-party collections. So for the current fiscal year, our actual year to date is $809,541. So at this point, we have actually already exceeded our budgeted amount of 782. Again, we have consistently been conservative with our speed camera. We in an effort to not solely rely on speed camera revenue because it is a pretty variable revenue source. We have updated our estimated actuals though to $1,440,000. And for our fiscal year 2024 projections, we have a total of $1,102,000. This upcoming fiscal year 2024, we've included automated red light enforcement. So we expect to receive revenue there, which is something we haven't received in the past, but that's something that we are looking for in the next fiscal year. The next category is reimbursements, rebates, and refunds. This includes the disposal fee rebate, which we receive every year. So far, we've received half of that. We receive it quarterly. So we do expect to receive an estimated to the full amount. So we have an estimated actual of $17,336. 4601, that reimbursement revenue. This is the line item that we use for revenues or expenditures that we spent that are to be reimbursed by the town. At this point, we had a budget amount of $15,000. I don't think we'll quite get there this year. We have an estimated actual of $2,687. So the total estimated actuals is $20,203, and we have a projected amount for fiscal year 2024 of $19,836. Next category is grant revenues. Here we include aid for police revenue. As of now, we received 76% of our budgeted amount, and we do expect to receive the full amount by the end of the year. Here we have an estimated actual, and we're still awaiting figures for the next fiscal year. So we've kind of put the same amount as a placeholder, but we can expect, well, I wouldn't say expect, but we do anticipate receiving a bit more there for fiscal year 2024. The next major category is what we consider other revenue. This includes cable TV franchise fees, investment interest income, grant revenues, election fees, recycled scrap metal revenue. So at this point, we've actually exceeded our budgeted amount. We're at $119,000 against a budgeted amount of $104,000. And we have an estimated actual, which we've increased. We expect to receive even more than we have thus far at $140,000. And for fiscal year 2024, we have increased our projection there from the $104,000 to $136,000. And the last category that we have here is transfers in. This is when we transfer money to the operating account from various other funds that we have. So here we've already made a transfer from the health and wellness and the OPEB. We have a total of $225,000. And for fiscal year 2024, we have a projected figure of $75,000. So overall, we have 4 months left, and at this point, we have received 90% of what we had budgeted. So we're at $7,944,000 against a budget of $8,774,000. Our estimated actuals at the end of the year, we have a projected amount of $9,512,000. And for fiscal year 2024, we have a projected amount of $9,161,000. One thing I'd like to note about the 2024 projection is that in the current budget book for fiscal year 2023, we actually have 5-year projections. And for the 2024 projection, last year we had a projection of $9,209,000. So safe to say that we did fairly well with our 5-year projections, as we're less than a percentage point away from what we had projected out last year and where we think we'll I'm sorry, for the next fiscal year, fiscal year 2024. So yes, that concludes the revenue report that covers the actual year to date, our estimated actuals, and fiscal year 2024 projections.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Are there council questions for Deputy Director Jones?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember Lingua, please speak.
Thank you. Director Jones, thank you very much for the report, and great to hear that that last comment about projections and how close you were pays off to the work you all of you do over there. That's good to see, because that allows some degree a little more of what folks like in business, though government is not in the business of being in business, it's in the business of being in government, but still in all the same, some type of predictability. As for the other numbers, seeing that at this point on total revenue, we're I just believe what we're just under 10% away from what between our budgeted and our year to date on total revenue. That looks promising, and it looks like costs are being managed well also. So hats off to all.
Thank you, council member.
Any additional council questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, if I can add a comment or two.
Please do.
I just want the council to know that as we are working to develop this budget, this is a difficult budget season. Mr. Jones mentioned early on with the constant yield notice. It's not the first time that we've had questions with the constant yield notice. Flatly, I think they're wrong. The terms that we were using in preparation for this report was their arithmetic doesn't work. So we'll be contacting the state and working through those issues, because it appears to us they're off by a couple $100,000. And so we're going to have to work through that. Mr. Jones also mentioned the 5-year projections, and we're still putting together the estimated actuals on the expenditure side and our projections for expenditures for next year. But if you take a look at the projection for fiscal 24, we were going into the year projecting about a $200,000 budget deficit. And so we're working hard to figure this out and to find balance. But I think the message is that this is not as easy of a budget year as it's been in the past, and that we will have some funds to transfer through ARPA and other sources for CIP and economic development, community development. But revenue net expenditures will continue to decrease at the end of the year. And so not doom and gloom, but this is a more difficult budget than they have been in the past couple of years. We received word that our healthcare is going up 17%. That's a preliminary number. They said it may come down. We're still waiting to hear on our workers' compensation cost. And we're still waiting to hear on the market rate comparison, salary comparison. We should have those numbers within the next week. There's just a lot of moving parts for the fiscal 24 budget. The fiscal 25 budget will have similar moving parts. And as I've been saying, and Mr. Jones and Mr. Smith echoing, our eye is really on fiscal 26 and what may happen with real property values for our next triennial assessment.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Just to give you a heads up for our conversation tomorrow night, I was quite surprised by the results of in line 4008, the personal property tax. And I'd like to understand that a little better. I assume that that's the tax on sort of not items for sale, but items that are owned by the business, such as fixtures and equipment and so on.
Yes. And if it's all right with you, Mr. Mayor, I could give an explanation for the whole council in probably 30 seconds or less.
Sure.
There was legislation last year that changed the exemption amount. Previously, businesses had the first $2,000 of their business personal property exempted from a tax levy. That's been changed to be $20,000 exemption. And when applied, our base went from 36 million to 21 million.
That's a big deal. I'm honestly a little surprised that legislation last year didn't get attention from MML. So I want to ask a few questions about that. Would have liked to have known about this last year when it was coming in.
That's two of us, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
So if we can discuss this at our individually, but thank you for that summary. Are there additional questions and comments on this presentation from anyone, members of the public, members of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I did have a question for the town manager, if I may.
Yes.
Mr. Lustitian, regarding 2026 and the triennial assessment, is your concern that you're going to see a noticeable decrease in property value?
I think he stepped away, but I think that's one of the concerns we have. We just don't know at this point. And this is Paul Smith, Director of Finance. We
Yes,
don't
sir.
know at this time, but we're thinking we may see an adjustment, because we're dealing with the inflation and recession. We're not 100% sure, but we are waving the flag and letting everyone know that we expect that to be a tough year.
So essentially you're seeing, like, due to the increase in interest rates and essentially in how that's affecting price value or pricing on homes,
That's correct.
that you're seeing that that's going to be determinant on assessments.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And other factors, but correct.
There's been an assumption that the higher interest rates the Fed has been pushing out lately are going to drive down property values, and that has happened in significant parts of the country already, but not in the Mid-Atlantic. So for whatever reason, we have been passed over so far, but that probably can't last indefinitely.
Well, there's price and there's value,
Mm-hmm.
and as how big that concentric circle is will vary from area to area. So
Okay, shall we move on to the general fund projections? That is the
Sure.
fourth presentation.
sure.
Also, Deputy Director Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening again, members of the public, council. So we are revisiting the fund balance projections, fiscal year 2024. Again, we are in the process of the budget development for fiscal year 2024. Projections are for the current fiscal year and will provide an opportunity for the budget committee to make mid-year adjustments, and it will assist in determining next year funding levels. So this is a slide from the previous presentation. We've made an update to the general fund. So all of the other lines are consistent with the previous presentation. We had an initial projection for the fund balance in general fund at the end of the current fiscal year of $3,735,000. And since we have made updates, we have an update of $4,689,000. And this came from an update from the fiscal 2022 audit numbers and for fiscal year 2023 revenue net expenditure projections. So we were able to get this figure from the revenue that we had just projected out in the previous presentation, and we got updated figures from the auditors for the previous fiscal year. So this is a history of the general fund and the various funds. Again, the only numbers here that have changed are the general fund line, which shows fiscal year 2021. This is consistent with the previous presentation, but we have made an update to fiscal year 2022 since we got updated numbers from the auditors. We have a total of $5,467,000 for fiscal year 2022, and an update for fiscal year 2023, $4,689,000. And this shows the other funds that we had: health and wellness, debt service, special revenue, TIF, and CIP. These numbers are also the same. So this next slide is general fund history. It shows the years, the general fund balance dating back to fiscal year 2018. Starting in 2019, revenue net expenditures was used to fund our community development fund, our economic development fund, health and wellness, and our largest fund where we use these revenues, which is the capital improvement fund. So 2018, if you look, we had a general fund ending balance of $2,678,000. That year, we expenditures actually exceeded revenue. So that's the lowest that the general fund has been. In 2019, the general fund ending balance went from $2,678,000 to $3,313,000, which increased the general fund balance with a net expenditure, revenue net expenditure of $634,843. And those funds were used to fund, we had capital improvement, economic development funds, and community development funds for fiscal year 2020. The following year, in fiscal year 2020, revenue net expenditures totaled $843,830, which helped to increase the general fund to a total of $4,225,894. And again, that was used to fund debt service, community development, economic development, and CIP. Fiscal year 2021, we had a net revenue net expenditure totaling $1,431,000, and that provided an ending balance of $5,657,000. And again, those numbers that we had there, the $1,431,000 was used to fund various other funds that we had, including capital improvement, economic development, and community development. For fiscal year 2022, we received word from the auditors that the revenue net expenditure should be $1,726,490, giving us an ending balance of $5,467,000. And those revenues, we actually had a projected amount of around 1.5. So the end of last fiscal year, we actually have a little bit more to carry over to fiscal year 2023, which is good because for the current fiscal year, we are using the 1,726,000 to fund the CIP, community development, economic development in the current fiscal year. So for fiscal year 2023, we have a projected amount of 737,460, with giving us an ending general fund balance of 4,689,000 for fiscal year 2023. So when looking at where the town is at in the current fiscal year, revenue net expenditures is down considerably from the previous fiscal year. And one of the reasons for that is the revenue that we had projected for the tangibles personal property tax that Mr. Listician just mentioned before is actually down about 420,000 than what we had projected. So while we still will have revenue exceeding our budgeted amount by roughly 737,000, we had actually expected to come in closer to around 1.1 million at the end, which leaves us less revenue to fund projects in future years. So it is a bit concerning moving forward. At this point, we are still in pretty good financial standing as far as GFOA standing is concerned. GFOA requires 16% of the budgeted figure. At this point, that would require the town to keep a little less than 1.5 million in the general reserve. Our general fund reserve has remained fairly healthy, having at least 3.3 million since fiscal year 2019, which is double what is required. So while fiscal year 2023, the ending general fund balance isn't as high as it was in previous years, we're still in fairly healthy stance, considering that we still have double what is actually required by the GFOA. Another point I'd like to make as well is just where we are as far as our current budget is concerned. So the current budget is at 8,774,000, and that is our largest percentage increase year over year for budgets. If we look at fiscal year 2018 to 2019, the budget increased just 1.3%. 2019 to 2020, the budget had increased by 6.6%. 2020 to 2021, we had a 7% increase, and then 2021 to 2022, 6.8%. But if we look at 2022 to 2023, the budget increased close to a 12%. We had 11.24% increase. So our expenditures did increase as well. So if we take into account that we aren't going to take in as much revenue due to that personal tangible property tax issue that we had with the state legislation that increased that threshold, and then we have higher expenditures. We look at our revenue net expenditures, it's not as high. So while we're in fairly decent situation for fiscal year 2023, we are looking very closely at our numbers because it could prove to be very tight in future fiscal years when we're trying to fund capital improvement projects. So yes, that concludes the update on the general fund presentation, and I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Are there council questions for Deputy Director?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
The increases that you talked about, Director Jones, I take your impression is that they're not sustainable.
Yeah, so if we look at how we've been funding our capital improvement projects in the past, it's been based off of the revenue net expenditures. And as John mentioned earlier, the way that we've been going through the whole budget process, you are correct in that as expenditures go up, it won't be sustainable if we're solely relying on revenue net expenditures to fund CIP projects. So that's something that we are looking into as we put together the fiscal 2024 budget.
And I would add on to that, sir. The short answer to your question is yes. You're correct. It's not sustainable. The longer answer is so much depends on development and redevelopment and new buildings. And so you look at Riverdale Park Station, which is years behind on their multifamily, on their hotel. We have two other multifamily buildings that are in discussion or concept phase at this point. The Chambers property building and the one in Town Center. And then the eventual investments that we anticipate along the Purple Line. So long term, I think we will achieve long-term sustainability. Are we going to go through a hard patch here? Yes, I think so. And especially as it relates to funding CIP and propping up the other funds to carry out our programs in that. Because in 26, we're going to start, well, by 26, ARPA is going to be gone.
Right.
And so we're able to utilize ARPA for a lot of things now. But we have been very careful on our structural changes, not utilizing one-time money for continuing expenditures.
Right.
And that's important. So the short answer to your question, yes, sir. It's not sustainable. And if no development happens, then we would have to regroup.
Okay. So essentially what you're looking at for when we're getting to fiscal year 26, the fact that ARPA money will be essentially appropriated, the fact that we could very well be seeing lower assessments with the triennial, the fact that at that point, now it's the one I'm not too sure about. Maybe you can help me out. How much debt we'll be carrying at that point?
We have one of our loans. Mr. Jones, can you check page 39 of the budget book, please? There's a schedule at the bottom. I think it's page 39 that I think we have one of our loans expiring in 2026.
Okay.
Which would free up. Is that true,
Yeah.
Mr. Jones? Is that 300,000?
Yes, yeah, you were really close. It's page 40. Yeah. Yes, the 26 is when that loan does mature.
And that's 300,000 a year.
Yes, the PNC.
Yes. So we get that paid for, and so that would free up an additional 300 for either operating or for other purposes as directed by the council.
So that's your one small bright spot when it comes to 26, is that you'll be in a stronger position there with
Yes, sir.
regard to that doesn't eliminate all our debt servicing, does it?
No, sir. We have the CDA loans,
Right.
and they're bond funded, so we can't pay them off
Right.
sooner and save anything.
Right. That's those are at a lower rate, so that's the one benefit that we have. But it's just going forward then, anything that we try and finance is going to come at higher cost. So,
Yes, sir.
okay. All right.
Councilmember Smith?
Yeah, Mr. Town Manager, you mentioned, I believe, that things like CIP and town programs would be things that would need to be reevaluated if our budget picture becomes murkier. Did I hear that correctly?
Well, I think we would have to reevaluate a lot of things if things become murkier. We've been careful not to make structural changes, and by structural changes, what that means to us is we haven't been adding staff recurring costs. We haven't been signing long-term contracts. We haven't been adding recurring cost. And one-time money, we only use for one-time expenditures. That's a mistake that lots of municipal governments make. And then when the money runs out, they say, what do we do now? And we haven't done that. So I hope that answers your question, sir.
Partially, I'm mostly wondering which portions we, like, if we're looking at the budget book, assuming there is some shortfall down the line, 25, 26, which portions of the budget, I'm trying to think of how to phrase it. So we know over time, like, costs grow, right? Like, naturally, for inflation and various other reasons. If we get to a point where we have a gap between how much money we have and how much we're spending, could you estimate at this point, or just, a ballpark, what portions of the budget would primarily be the driver of that?
Well, what drives the budget overall is our salary and benefit costs. Our salary and benefit costs make up the vast majority of the budget. And so if we find ourselves in out years with revenue or expenditures exceeding revenue, then value judgments have to be made on individual programs and services, and compare that against the sources of revenue. And the council then would be tasked with deciding what services they want to provide or change the revenue structure.
Do we know, off the top of your head, Mr. Town Manager, which departments of the town staff have the highest cost for personnel, salaries, and benefits?
Well, I think it goes in direct correlation to the size of the department. So the police department's the largest, public works second largest, administrative services the third largest, and then development services and finance services and employee services are the same size.
All right, thank you, Mr. Town Manager.
Are there additional council questions or comments? Are there any public questions or comments? Thank you, Deputy Director Jones. Appreciate the presentation. The next item on the agenda is my report. I'm going to be very short. Looking at the clock, it's 9:24 p.m. COVID is still out there. Approximately 60% of the United States is in an area with high or higher transmission. Please be careful. Usual things. I attended the Maryland Mayors Association meeting. I think it was last week. Seems like it was a long time ago. And some interesting discussions on cybersecurity, cyber attacks against municipalities, First Amendment audits, cannabis revenues, and just a good meeting. I'll discuss some more of that next week in my report. And I think that's everything I wanted to discuss as a teaser for next week this evening. Mr. Town Manager, Town Manager's report.
Yes, sir. I will attempt to be brief. Already mentioned the constant yield notice. We'll have more on that. I believe at the next meeting, Mr. Jones will present on that. March 1st, the MUTC meetings at 7:30 via Zoom. There's a Board of Elections meeting on March 2nd at 7 p.m. via Zoom. On March 13th, we have the State of the Town that will also be on an electronic platform that's on Zoom. We have a community conversation scheduled for March 18th at 9:30, and the topic is Walk, Bike, Drive Safety Initiative. There's a Town Seal Design Committee meeting on March 23rd at 7:30 p.m. One thing, Mr. Mayor, I mentioned earlier that I wanted to mention in my report. The town is contracted with a company known as Opto Park. It's a sister organization for Opto Traffic, the company that handles the automated enforcement for speeding. Opto Park has basically advised that they're not going to support, or they are not supporting their parking platform anymore. We are down to, I believe, one machine that works occasionally for writing parking tickets. So we're having difficulty issuing citations. The department's been responsive. We found a contractor who I am going to sign an agreement to get us through the next few months. And then we will be having an RFP go out that will encompass all automated enforcement. That's red light cameras, that's speed enforcement. Perhaps someday it'll be stop sign enforcement. But it will also be parking enforcement. And we'll have that RFP go out hopefully within the next 4 weeks. And because we really want to have a new platform for all these systems. The last thing I have is that Director Lewis sent an email out earlier in response to an inquiry from the HOA at Riverdale Park Station about infrastructure transfer. That process is moving along. We will be making the projected timeline that we shared back at the end of 22. So we're making good, solid progress. And if anybody has questions or that on details, just please reach out. Director Lewis and I are available.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. I noticed some new stop signs in Riverdale Park Station driving through there in the last couple of weeks. So that's at least some progress on that particular issue. Are there any questions for the town manager from members of the council? From members of the public? Okay, let's move to council committee. Mr. Schulman.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. A quick follow-up on the Riverdale Park Station update. I want to first off thank the town manager and thank the council for helping move those stop signs along. The action following my comment last time was really swift and appreciated. And I've noticed a noticeable increase in the feeling of safety while transiting through Riverdale Park Station, coming home and leaving for work every day. I want to say it's only about, I'd call it 90% complete. They're still missing some of the lettering on the roads on near 45th and Woodbury. The line and the paint on the road that says stop is not there. And I see drivers at least 15 times in the last 2 weeks personally observed people just blowing by the additional stop sign. So I think additional work still needs to happen. And the mention of the road transfer also want me to prompt the second question I had, which was, because there continues to be issues with trucks at the FedEx store parking for multiple times a day to load and unload packages for the FedEx store and blocking a substantial portion of the intersection. When the road transfer does happen, is there a plan either through working with the company or some kind of enforcement plan to mitigate the impacts of that situation?
Mr. Town Manager?
Yes, so we'll be able to enforce parking regulations once the roads are accepted by the town. I know that staff have reached out to FedEx before. We can reach out to them again. I would think that they want to be good corporate citizens, and that's going to be our request of them, whether we have authority to enforce a parking regulation or not. And so we'll be reaching out again to FedEx.
Mr. Schmitz, I believe you were next.
Thank you. I also wanted to follow up on the town manager's report. I think also to keep in mind, when the roads transfer, there are at least 2 streetlights in the community that have been knocked down by large trucks. The issue of large, in some cases, semi-trailer trucks trying to traverse through the neighborhood despite the prohibition is something that continues to be a problem, and I think it will continue to be a problem, knocking down streetlights, knocking down stop signs, all sorts of traffic signs in the neighborhood. So hopefully that problem too can be addressed when the road transfer is complete.
Thank you, Mr. Schmitz. There's actually a state bill that was passed with some support from me, allowing us to do automated enforcement of that, but it set up a process for implementing that appears to have gotten stalled in the shift of office in the county council. So I need to reach back out to our new county council member, Eric Olson, and see if we can get that process going, or at least find out what the status of it is. So I will add that to my list of things to do. Mr. Dorsey.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to quickly piggyback off of what Mr. Schulman brought up, in addition to the signs, which are, I think, a great improvement, but the need for paint to specifically call it out, especially as new signs are introduced, so that folks that are driving, especially when you have sort of a short introduction to the stop sign, such as on Woodbury, where right after the Gold's Gym going, I believe, eastbound, there is a follow-up stop sign, that there just be some paint introduced. But my main point being that I think I mentioned this at a previous meeting, but just for the future reference, as raised about enforcement, I've noticed also that many of the issues that I've noticed are that revolve around also the parking, following parking paint lines as well. So coming out of certain intersections, you'll see cars parked outside of those lines. Just generally enforcing, or at least maybe giving some kind of warning to folks that are parked outside of those areas, not so much to simply enforce the parking, but just to make folks more aware of the fact that there is that those lines were created for a reason, that the traffic engineer put them there so that there would be increased visibility throughout the community, is something that I've noticed. So the paint itself is good, but also increasing awareness or enforcement on adhering to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dorsey. Councilmember Lingua, your hand is up.
Yes, it is, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much. Being that we have such a group of residents from Riverdale Park Station here with their concerns about roadways, public right-of-ways, and the safety, I had a question for all of them in terms of, I was wondering what their feelings were about enforcing parking on the proper side of the street and not have such a prevalence of left wheel to the curb parking that there is.
You can ask the question. Do any of the residents wish to respond?
I think I'm a little unclear as to the exact question left. So you're talking about reducing the number of street spots? Is that?
No. I'm just reducing the amount of folks who are parking left wheel to the curb.
So the
Or parking on the wrong side of the street.
just speaking for myself as a resident of Riverdale Park Station, I think I know what you're talking about. Councilmember Lingua, it's
Yes, sir.
most prevalent on Woodbury.
Uh-huh.
I mean, first of all, we're in favor of traffic enforcement in the community.
Okay.
But I think you'll see a lot of that. I certainly can't prove it, but a lot of that is Gold's Gym attendance. People zooming in, grabbing a spot they see as they enter the community. So they're heading eastbound on Woodbury. They'll see a spot, you know, there's only parking on the north side of Woodbury. They'll see a spot and zoom in.
So it sounds like you'd be in favor of vigorous
Yep.
enforcement of that.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, and just to piggyback off that, first of all, I think we defer to whatever the regulations are regarding parking that way on, particularly on the side of opposing traffic. But what I've observed, certainly where Gold's Gym is concerned, is folks are just blatantly parking where the crosswalk is concerned, where it's to the point where people with baby strollers or just general pedestrians are unable to use the ramp that would allow you to get onto the sidewalk. So it's fairly blatant disregard for any of the paint or other, I think common sense parking standards that you would expect. So any enforcement that could be used to sort of help guide that traffic would, I think, be appreciated by any resident.
Okay.
Okay.
And as you heard from the town manager, we are currently hamstrung by technology issues from doing a lot of parking enforcement, but we can add that to our list. Should be addressed shortly. Okay, that brings us to council committee and ward reports. Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Following your example, I'll be brief. I know, I can't remember if it was our last meeting or it was a recent meeting. We had a discussion about telecom wires being sort of placed haphazardly or not placed, just being there. And I set out to, log some positions where those would be, since so we could transfer that to the companies. I didn't get very far because I would be just basically like writing down every 50 yards in Ward 1. I can continue that, send photos and addresses and whatnot. It would be a fairly lengthy project. But if we could just get our service providers to be good neighbors, that would be fantastic. And that'll be all I have for this evening.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I had the distinct honor and pleasure, had a great opportunity to present to Samantha Ferris, who was formerly the assistant director at Riversdale, who is now project manager and assistant director at College Park Aviation Museum, a proclamation recognizing her time and her commitment she made to Riversdale, the span of 16 years, as well as proclaiming the town proclaiming that on February 12th was Samantha Ferris Day. She was a great person to work with at Riversdale, and we wish her all the best at her new tenure up at College Park Aviation Museum.
Does that conclude your report? I'll take the microphone turning red as an indication that it does. Councilmember Mejia texted me a few minutes ago and said she was not feeling well and was going to drop off of the meeting. So that brings us to Councilmember Mayers.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. No award reports at this time.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Are there any public comments? Okay, let's move to work session discussion items. Item 1, town election, election judges and Board of Election Appeals members.
Director Barnes.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. This is just a reminder that we have actually very few vacancies now, but we do have a couple of vacancies still out there for mostly for Board of Election Appeals and alternate election judges. The town will continue to advertise those vacancies. But this was on the agenda when we had a lot of vacancies, and now the lists are looking great, and we're almost there and ready for the May 1st election. So if there's anyone who's still interested, please pass their name along and I will forward them along to Mayor Thompson.
Thank you so much, Director Barnes. Any council questions or comments? Any public comments? Okay, let's move on to work session discussion. Item 2, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA update.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we have Laverne Peaks with us this evening. Laverne's going to provide an update. Laverne?
Good evening, Mayor Thompson, council members and members of the public. So I just want to give you an update on some of the programming and where we are with our expenditures for ARPA. Next slide, please. Thank you. So this report update is from the beginning of ARPA, which we received our first tranche. We were able to backdate some of the, some of our expenses back to March 2021. So this report reflects March 2021 through the end of 2022, which covers 2 fiscal years. So in the area of public health, we have spent over $88,000. We have spent over $700,000 in negative economic impacts. And that includes a few programs. So that's the Farmers Market Dollars program, as well as some of our grant, nonprofit grants, and as well as rental assistance. We have other expenditures in infrastructure. We did a study. Revenue replacement, we spent over $200,000, and that includes a few areas as well. Lastly, there was administrative, and in that area included the one-time inflationary bonuses for all employees. And this for the total time, we spent a little over $1.3 million. Next slide, please. So as I just indicated, as we talked about our expenditures, the largest area has been negative economic impacts, as well as revenue replacement and public health. And that makes sense because we really focused on our short-term goals of helping residents through the pandemic and the negative economic impacts. Next slide, please. So the council, what was budgeted for fiscal year 23, we budgeted for fiscal year 23, $85,000, but to date we spent $88,000. We budgeted $725,000 for fiscal year 23, and to date we spent over $750,000. And for capital acquisitions and projects, that includes CIP projects, we budgeted over $3.9 million. And we've only spent over $200,000 to date. And that includes some purchases for vehicles. And so that's an area where we really are going to be focusing on this year. And we budgeted $260,000 in administrative, and to date we spent over $226,000. So our total budgeted for fiscal year 23 was over $5 million, but this is the program amount, 1.2. We had some other expenses and revenue replacement that were more somewhat administrative. So we are working to really focus on those capital projects and negative economic impacts for the next fiscal year. Next slide, please. As I stated before, 59% of our ARPA spending has been on assisting residents and businesses that experience negative economic consequences of COVID-19. So that includes small business assistance grants for commercial rent and utility assistance, Farmers Market Dollars program, which is very popular amongst residents, emergency housing assistance program, which helps residents with rent, mortgage, and utility assistance, and our nonprofit food assistance grants. Next slide, please. So just a few numbers to kind of talk about the programming a little bit. As of right now, we have over, we've added a few more, but we have 240 households that participate in the Farmers Market Dollars program, and that's over 900 individuals. And as you know, the Farmers Market runs weekly. And through Project N95, we've given over 46,000 masks to households and businesses. And that was really part of the public health initiative. We've given over $26,000 to small business through the commercial rent and utility. And we have helped we've helped 14 households with emergency rental assistance, and we have 11 applications pending. We spent over $180,000 right now. And so, I'm sorry, the delinquency was an average of 9 months, and all of those residents that received that were low to moderate income, means that they were within or below the federal poverty guidelines. We've given over $200,000 to nonprofits for programming, mostly for food assistance. And through the nonprofit food assistance grants, we've assisted over 11,000 people. And this is based on their reporting, the nonprofits reporting, 7,300 bags or boxes of food and over 4,300 hot meals served or delivered. Next screen, please. Moving forward, we are looking to increase participation in the small business grant program. So we think we can work on marketing and outreach, particularly along the Purple Line corridor. We want to invest in workforce development programs. We want to focus on some placemaking initiatives east of the river. And we want to take a look at our community engagement tools. So how are we talking to residents? How are they responding back? How do we find out their needs in terms of what we can do with ARPA funding? Next screen, please. So for fiscal year 24, these are our capital improvement projects, which you're very familiar with. So we have our largest initiative is the Walk Bike Drive at 1.5 million. And public Wi-Fi, we're still working on that project, and it's just an estimation of 300,000. And then we're looking to purchase more vehicles for neighborhood services as well as public works and the police department. And then we have the municipal center project, DPW, building demolition, and the pedestrian walkway. So again, fiscal year 24 is a very ambitious year. We are estimating that all of these projects are going to be 3.5 million. Next slide, please. Thank you. So through the end of December 2022, we spent 1.3 million, and we're estimating that the remainder of fiscal year 23 will spend another 600,000. And next year, as I said before, we're hoping to do a lot of those capital improvement projects at 3.5 million. And so if we haven't, we are looking to really wrap everything up by fiscal year 26. But if all goes well, we should be completed with all the projects at that time. Next slide, please. I believe that is it. Thank you. I'll take any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Ms. Peaks. Are there questions for Ms. Peaks? From the council.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember, go ahead.
Thank you, Ms. Peaks. With the SNAP benefits expiring on March 1st and the impact that could have on current recipients, is the town in a position to address that in some capacity?
Well, we do have funding for the program through the remainder of this fiscal year, and we are anticipating it in fiscal year 24, although we are budgeting a little bit less, but that will obviously be up to the council. But we are looking for other funding sources.
Okay. My concern is that possibility that folks may not be prepared for this, and being aware of town programs, you might start seeing new applicants coming forward.
We get new applicants weekly. So like I said, it is a very popular program, but we actively look at the reports and who's using it and who isn't. And so if people haven't used it 2 months consecutively, we send them a letter and then take them off the list. And that way we're preserving some of the funds by not paying fees for those who are not using it.
Right. And you've got it down to a 2-month time frame.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Additional council questions for Ms. Peaks? And any public comments or questions? Thank you, Ms. Peaks. Appreciate your report.
Thank you.
Next item on tonight's agenda is proposed Chapter 75 Stormwater Management.
Sorry, I was muted. I am pinch hitting this evening for Ryan Shelton on all the various things that are on the agenda for him this evening. So we've talked about these stormwater requirements several times with the mayor and council. The one thing that's new towards the end of the memo, Ms. Barnes, if you can pull that up, is that there was interest in the council in terms of how much would these types of evaluations of properties cost. So Ryan talked with one of the town's on-call engineers, and they gave a rough estimate, depending obviously on the size and complexity of the structure, anywhere from $1,500 to $5,000. And so we are looking at how we may be able to design a program to assist in offsetting that cost. And so I don't know what that program would look like this evening, but that's something that we're working on, and that we will bring back to the council for approval. Are there any questions or concerns about the program overall in terms of what we're trying to do? And we're trying to do two things with this. Three things. One, highlight stormwater management by having its own chapter. Two, having prohibitions for clogging waterways, and then three, protecting folks in rental housing by requiring some mitigation activities and notifications that a property is in a floodplain.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Are there council questions or comments? Are there public questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, go ahead, Councilmember.
I did have a question regarding transfer of ownership of a property. does the new owner need to reapply for essentially so as to demonstrate to the town that they're in compliance, or does that convey with the sale?
So with a rental license, and Ms. Barnes, correct me if I have this wrong, with the rental license, you have to reapply for the rental license. But the approved plan, I would think if it's already in place, the person would simply be able to say that the ones on file, if they wanted to change it, they obviously could submit something. But from a staff perspective, it makes sense once there's an approved plan to keep that plan in place unless conditions change.
Okay. All right, thank you.
So any additional council or public comments or questions? So I have one question, which is the approximate number of rental licenses that are currently in use in town.
So Ms. Barnes, can you pull up the number of multifamily properties that are, if Mr. Jones could?
Multifamilies, I think, is about 10.
And I believe that's what we're focused on here. Is that correct? I believe that's what the focus of this is. I'd have to go back and review that, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. And so the single family rentals are not included in the program?
Give me one moment to pull the legislation. Ms. Barnes, can you pull up the actual legislation? There's a definition of an affected property. So it may be singles as well. Just can't read those. So if we go to definitions, affected property, or rental property in the town. Oh yeah, so it's going to be singles as well, Mr. Mayor.
That's what I thought.
The limiting factor is whether or not it's in a floodplain or if they've experienced a flood since 2010.
Okay, so it's not every single family rental, just the ones that are in the floodplain. And
so that would be everything east of the river. It would be some well, all along 51st. It would be any along Kenilworth. I believe sections of Taylor. Down towards Edmonston. We can put together a map that shows, and we can identify what structures would be impacted by this.
Okay, but it's,
I believe that would include also portions of Ward 1 east of Route 1 and north of 410, south of Riverdale Park Station. I don't know if there's rental properties there, but
yes. Yes.
Okay, well, it sounds like it's because it's just the ones that are in the floodplain, it's a more complicated question, but I'm interested to see how we can move forward on that. That's the price tag is higher than I had hoped, to say the least. So we'll have to see how we can manage that. Okay, additional council questions or comments or public members of the public? Okay, let's move on to agenda item 4, emergency amendment to property maintenance code prohibiting parking on unprepared surfaces.
Yes, so as a matter of routine, the core staff that are involved in all of these codes and programs, there's a handful of us. We all read our own code. We go back, we check things. And Mr. Chelton actually was doing that, and he advised that he found in a 2018 ordinance updating Chapter 64 that a definition of a prepared surface was added, making it clear that what was intended, you have to park on some sort of a prepared surface and not park in the grass, for example. Previously, there hadn't been a definition for a prepared surface. So in 2018, that was added, but in the deletions, the authority to enforce that was inadvertently deleted, as best we can determine. And so as of today, now that we know this, we can't enforce that provision. It seems that it would be best placed in the property maintenance code. And staff are requesting, and I know we don't have the language this evening. We found this out on Friday. And we're going to put language together, but we would ask the mayor and council consider this next week as a prohibition that we believed we had in effect, and just clarifying it and then putting it in the property maintenance code.
Thank you. Okay, I pulled up what I think is 2018-OR-15.
And it was 64-10.1 was included in the deletions.
Okay, well, that was a mistake. Okay. Council questions or comments on this? Councilmember Smith.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Forgive my ignorance here, and I'm not saying that in a leading way. I'm generally curious. As someone from the great state of Alabama, I've spent significant portions of my life, maybe most of it, parking on unimproved surfaces. And I'm just wondering, what is this an aesthetic issue? What is the reasoning behind it? I assume the folks on the council at the time had good reasons for it, but I'd be curious to hear what those are.
Well, it's something that was in the model property maintenance code for years, and many jurisdictions have continued it. I believe the basic premise, part of it's aesthetics, that you don't want vehicles settling into grassy areas, having basic mud pits and that sort of thing. And also, I believe it's to limit the number of vehicles that may be parked around a house. So in Prince George's County, they have a lot coverage ratio for pervious surfaces of 30%, and that's for stormwater management. But an offshoot of that is that that you don't have someone turning their residential property into a parking lot, but by having vehicles parked throughout the yard.
Understood. Sounds good. Let's hope my mother's municipality does not adopt this, or I'm not sure where I will park when I go see her.
So the definition of an improved surface can include gravel.
Yes.
So it's it doesn't take too much to improve a surface.
And I'll let my mom know to start pricing out gravel.
And Mr. Mayor, I recall parts of these conversations from 2018, and I believe that we had a resident mention that it shouldn't just be concrete or macadam, but we should have gravel, and that was deliberately added.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a thought, as I'm thinking about it and understanding the issue now, wouldn't it be, we would prefer it not be concrete, right? Because that would make the surface impermeable. So like shell, gravel, something like that would be preferable to the concrete pad.
Yes, definitely.
Alrighty, thank you.
Okay. Any additional comments on this before we move on, or questions? Any members of the council or public? Okay, let's move on to discussion item 5, 54th Avenue Spring Lane Sidewalk Improvement Project.
New mom?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council member. I will be providing an update on the 54th Avenue Spring Lane Road Sidewalk Project. No action is requested at this time. Instead, staff will brief the mayor and council on bids received for the 54th Avenue Sidewalk Project and the contractor recommended to construct the project. Staff will seek authorization for the town manager to sign the contract at March 6th legislative session. Just to provide the overview of the project, staff released the invitation to bid for the 54th Avenue Sidewalk Project on January 26th and received bids on February 22nd, which was the due date. Staff received 7 bids in total, with a price proposal ranging from $93,900 to $177,000.25. The review committee comprised of project staff and engineers. The review was completed of proposals on February 24th and determined that Santos Construction Co. Inc. submitted the most responsive lowest bid with a price proposal at $104,179. Their project experience was relevant to the scope of work. The project description. The project is to install a 5-foot bump out from the existing curb line along the east side of 54th Avenue, starting at Jefferson Street and moving to south for approximately 200 feet, Then behind the existing curb to its connection with the existing sidewalk on Spring Lane. This option narrows the roadway width from 25 feet to 20 feet along the bump out. This option avoids having to remove encroachment within the right of way, namely private fences and an existing water meter. Several small trees will have to be removed during this process. Going over the budget, the town received reprogrammed CDBG funding, Community Development Block Grant funds from the county in 2020 for the project. The project budget is $167,500 with $150,000 funded through CDBG. The balance coming from the CIP funds. Engineering costs a total $57,905 and included a right-of-way survey and a development of alternative project designs. 2 designs were provided during the survey, each with 2 options. The project budget is $109,595. We are looking at a 15% contingency. The total budget will be $119,806. Funds are available to cover the contingency. And at the March 6th legislative session, staff will present a draft contract for mayor and council review and will seek authorization for the town manager to sign the contract with the recommended contractor. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Hayter. Council questions or comments? I'll just jump in and say that I'm quite excited that this project is finally becoming real. We've needed a sidewalk along that area for quite a while. There's quite a worn footpath along there. So I look forward to this happening. Councilmember, you're just clapping, Councilmember Wheeler. Thank you. Any additional questions or comments? It's also nice we got 7 responses to the call. Okay, let's move on to the next work session discussion item, CIP 22PW04 54th Place Pocket Park and Tot Lot.
I was muted again. Sorry about that. So again, pinch hitting for Ryan, but the summary is that a deed from 1956 has a reference that the property where we want to put the pocket park and tot lot has a restriction that it be an alley. And Mr. Sussman has talked with other attorneys in his practice and has concluded that we need to have an ordinance drafted for the council's consideration that would abandon 54th Place as an alley. That staff need to attempt to contact the heirs of the original grantors, the sellers of the property to the town, to see if they have any objection to us putting in a park, if we can find them. So there's a variety of ways Mr. Sussman told us that we're going to have to try to do that, including posting a notice in newspapers asking for any heirs to the original grantors to come forward, then to conduct a public meeting as part of the ordinance adoption process, to take any feedback at the public hearing under advisement, and then if the council moves forward with the adoption, to abandon the public alley, then we would move forward with the project at that location. The project is funded by $150,000 in federal funding through a community development block grant. And as the memo indicates, we're anticipating green space, play equipment, appropriate lighting, and related improvements. It's a much needed project for that area. The only easement across the property is a 4-foot wide strip for a sewer line. So as we take into account how we're positioning play equipment in that in the 30-foot wide area, there's a 4-foot wide strip along the one side that we can't obstruct. Benches and that things of that nature would be fine. Things are easily moved. And with that, Mr. Mayor, I'll take any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Are there questions from the council for the town manager on this discussion item? I will speak up and say that I'm also glad to see this project moving forward. I know we've had a few hiccups since the deed restriction was discovered, and I'm glad we have a path past that. So thank you.
We will work. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say we'll work with Mr. Sussman to draft the necessary documents for your consideration.
Very good. Are there any public comments? Okay, let's move on to discussion item 7, Town of Riverdale Park Mosquito Mitigation Initiative.
Ms. Barnes.
Good evening, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. No action is requested tonight. Staff are seeking feedback on a proposed resident-driven initiative, which is called the TRP Mosquito Mitigation Initiative. As you know, there's been a lot of discussion regarding mosquito control in the community over the years, at least over the last 2 years. There's been significant discussion. The town currently participates in the spraying program as well as the larvicide program. And the thought behind this initiative is to simply work to decrease the population of mosquitoes in the town. So the way the program works currently, MDA sprays the community on a 3-week cycle. And basically that decision to spray is based on the number of mosquitoes that are collected in the trap. So the idea was to implement, or at least provide the opportunity for residents to implement some of these different alternatives to the mosquito spraying. So one alternative, of course, we've already talked about is the exemption program, and we've talked about how much of a buffer that would provide for residents who are concerned about the mosquito spraying. The other options would be the purchase and distribution of a limited number of GAT traps, mosquito dunks and mosquito bits, bat boxes, and then conducting a public information campaign regarding best practices to repel mosquitoes and eliminate mosquito breeding sites. We already do some of that, but just to encourage residents to do what they can to manage the mosquito population on their properties. And also to consider other things like plants that can repel or reportedly repel mosquitoes. So that's something the town would consider perhaps doing some of that if possible in some of the areas that we maintain. So there's a lot of little things to hopefully make an impact overall on the mosquito population in town.
Thank you, Director Barnes. As I mentioned, I had my personal program last summer that involved the mosquito bits. And I also installed 2 GAT traps, and I did a fairly good job of maintaining them during the course of last summer. So I think that they probably contributed. Certainly there are a lot of mosquitoes that got caught in those, but I just don't know if it was as many as the others. There's one other part of my own personal mosquito program that seemed shockingly effective. I'm not sure if I want to add it to this program, which is that they sell these things that look like badminton rackets that you charge them up, and they have a little button that turns on a high voltage. There's like three planes of wires. And there's one day where there were just a bunch of mosquitoes at one place on my property, and I just went out and like played badminton with the mosquitoes for a little while and electrocuted many of them. And that really seemed to help with the population for a long time after that. You know, it's like I collapsed it or something, but I don't think there's a lot of science backing that up, but it was satisfying and seemed to be effective. So any other council comments on this list of programs? This all sounds good to me.
Mr. Mayor, I would just warn you that when I was in Afghanistan, we had one of those devices for the flies that would get into our tent, and we were there long enough to notice that the flies began, the process of natural selection towards the end of the deployment. They became harder to wrangle with that badminton racket. So just keep an eye on the evolution of the mosquitoes in your yard.
Well, the trick is that you really have to completely exterminate them, and then if you leave just a few alive, then you get into real trouble. But as I said, it was mainly for the occasional mosquito that got inside. But when I saw a dozen of them flitting around in this one area, I was like, I'm taking them out, and that worked. So any additional council comments? This is fiscal 23 spending that we're planning here. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, all sounds good to me.
Great.
Last work session discussion item are minutes. As I always say, what you said last meeting is going to be put down in history, and that happens through the minutes process. So be sure to read through and make sure that Director Barnes and her staff have carefully captured all of your words, and otherwise somebody 15 years from now might ask you to explain some statement that you made that's in the minutes that you might have preferred to slightly rephrase. So please take a good look at them. Okay, that brings us to new business. Are there any items of new business? Are there any items of unfinished business? Okay, we did better than I thought. It's 10:20, and let's call it an evening. I'm going to go chase down a little bit of dinner. Thank you all for being here, and I think it was a productive meeting. Take care.
Thanks all.
Thank you all very much.
Good night.